after seeing a passionate public defender talk about the Constitution, I decided to go in the opposite direction in terms of prestige and pay and become a public defender instead. I did that for a little over 3 years, and then I loved it. Then I left to practice exclusively in criminal law. And I know what some of you are probably thinking about public defenders. I mean, when I meet people, they'd assume that I didn't shave and I didn't eat meat if they met me because I was a public defender. But while I was there, I did come out of the closet to my coworkers one evening to let them know that, in fact, it was true. I was a Republican. So I was a Republican public defender because I believe in limited government. And criminal defense is about defending individuals from the government and their liberty. And when I fought to protect the rights of those least powerful among us, indigent clients, I was protecting the Constitution for everyone. And I've been thinking about these issues for years, so I'm very excited to be here, and I have a handout for you if that's permissible.
Mm-hmm. She'll get just...
Okay. I have a few ideas.
Just give it to Karen, pass it back.
Because I've handled cases as a public defender, filed those liens. I've done it as contract counsel, both like routine things, and then I've done murder case, rape case as a contract counsel. Took a couple baths on those in my private practice as a contract counsel for the public defender. But I wanted to tell you why I left the public defender when I believed in that work so much and I loved it so much. I had an enormous amount of cases, and I'm a hardworking person. You know, I was putting in the hours. I was working as hard as I could. And I stayed because I felt like I was doing as well or better as another attorney would in my place. But there was these enormous pressures to move cases along. And then one day, I was meeting with the client and discussing the plea offer from the prosecutor. And the client didn't think it was fair, didn't want the offer. And the client was right. It was not a fair offer. But it crossed my mind in that moment that it would be easier to get this client to take that unfair deal than it would be to convince the prosecutor to offer a fair one. And when that thought crossed my mind, I knew I had to leave because I didn't go to law school to sell out my clients. And I knew that my ability to stay in that capacity was going to compromise that. But not everyone in my place can afford the pricey real estate on the moral high ground. Others that I observed who had reached that point that I had stayed in their capacity as public defender, and at that, some of them just start selling out their clients and being part of the process to move things along, but practically an assistant for the prosecutor. They pressure their clients to just take whatever's offered, and their clients feel they have no choice because they know their attorney won't do a single thing for them if they want to go to trial. So also another practice that goes on is greet them and plead them. You go to court, you meet your client, you say here's the offer, and then they plead. I mean, that's really no way to practice law. You haven't had an opportunity to discuss everything, see if there's other witnesses that you need to talk to, investigate things further. But that goes on every day. Every day that goes on, the greet 'em and plead 'em process. So thank you so much for your attention to this issue. It's an important issue facing Missourians to protect our Constitution. But I'm probably going to make both sides angry at me by saying this. But growing the government is not the answer to this problem necessarily. Throwing more money into the criminal justice system I don't think is going to necessarily resolve these issues. My salary while I was at the public defender was not the issue. You could have paid me 10 times as much money. I was not able, it was an hour of the day issue. I did not have enough time to do it, whether you paid me 1/10 or 10 times as much as you were paying me. I think we need to look at our criminal justice system and see if the money we're spending on it is giving us return on investment in terms of public safety. And maybe we should look at the prosecutors having too many resources and think outside the box here, because maybe there would be adequate public defender system if there weren't so many cases. I have a couple of concerns about the contracting. I like the idea of privatization. I mean, I like that idea, but some of the numbers I've been hearing thrown about with regard to that, $50 to handle a misdemeanor case, $100. I charge $125 for a speeding ticket. And with due respect to Mr. Smith, I've spent more than 14 hours on every felony I've handled. I mean, I have patrol car videos to look at. I've got to meet with the client. I've got to go to court a couple of times. You start at arraignment. You have to go to circuit court. I spent a lot of time on those cases, and so I think that the way that they're contemplating the contract system, the mode would be to spend as little time as possible on each case. So I think that, and this is where the handout comes in, I think some privatization might be good, and I agree with Representative Kelly, who's not here anymore, I guess, but a pilot program is the way to go because we need to test the waters first before we do anything. I understand that Kentucky is doing a pilot program. I agree with Representative Marshall that it should be local. I think counties should maybe be able to opt in or out, but I have some ideas of where the funding could come from for counties to contract with attorneys. The counties could collect the public defender lien.
I'm going to interrupt you, and at the risk of being rude, we're going to have to move things along.
Okay.
I'm going to ask that you stick to your opposition of the bill instead of alternative ideas.
Oh, of course, yes. The restitution bill I'm opposed to because this bill is not about victims. The Crime Victims Compensation Fund covers medical expenses, funerals, and counseling for victims. It's about property matters, but it isn't about recoupment for the victims. It's about increasing the money the prosecutor has. The $2 per transaction fee for the whole time the payment is processed. This is on top of the $75. The $5 per victim payment, so if you have multiple victims, it could be like $15, $20. Every payment goes to MOPS. It's just not tenable and taking money from DOC inmates, they could never make phone calls to their family or buy stamps. Who's going to deposit money on their books if the prosecutors are just going to seize it? No one. So DOC wouldn't be able to control their population at all. I think this pressure comes from the bad check slush funds of the prosecutors drying up. And I think the bad check slush funds were a bad idea to begin with. Practicing these cases, the way that these bad check cases are being handled is really not the most thoughtful way to approach it, and we're doing too much socialization of the practice of law that way. We're making poor people even poorer. And this court cost sheet I gave you, I mean, every dollar, I've seen people take the last dollar out of their pocket to pay that court cost bill because it's their freedom on the line. They got to pay it. But that's a dollar they owed to their landlord. That's a dollar that they could have bought gas for their car, or, you know, it's a dollar out of the private sector and into the public one. And I think that we need to be very mindful of that. I think that the restitution idea is a bill that would hurt Missourians, both poor and tax-paying Missourians. I don't think it would do anything to make us safer, which is what the prosecutor's purpose is supposed to be. I think it would just make us all poorer. Thank you for considering my comments, and I'm happy to take any questions.